The cold wind sweeping in from the balcony echoed Sebastian Blackwell's voice. His words made Everly Lancaster's body stiffen under the blankets, her throat tightening until she could barely breathe. Clarissa Benson's tearful plea was unmistakable on the other end of the call. "Sebastian, everyone's looking forward to our wedding. I can't wait anymore. Please hurry up and marry me." Standing on the balcony, his features softened under the dim light as he coaxed her like she was made of glass. "Don't worry, sweetheart, I won't let you down." Even in the dead of night, being interrupted didn't bother him. Talking to his delicate, white moonlight seemed to be a labor of love. When Sebastian returned to the bedroom, there was still a trace of a smile in his eyes. But the moment he saw Everly sitting on the edge of the bed, his expression darkened. "Everly, what are you doing sitting there in the middle of the night? Are you trying to scare me to death?" She swallowed her bitterness and forced a smile. "What about you? How does it feel sweet-talking your lover at this hour?" "Lover? Don't be ridiculous," Sebastian snapped, irritation flickering in his eyes. "What I have with Clarissa is strictly for the fans. Don't disrespect her with such vile accusations." The audacity of his response made her voice tremble. "Disrespect? Tell me, Sebastian, what respectable colleague couple plans a wedding?" His jaw clenched and he averted his gaze. "You heard that?" Rubbing the back of his neck, he muttered, "I don't have a choice. The fans demand it. Clarissa and I have fans all over the world. If we don't finish the act, it'd be a slap in the face to her efforts." Efforts? Her chest tightened with sharp, numbing pain. For 3 years, she had to watch the world treat them as the perfect couple. She had to watch them flaunt their love in front of cameras, smiling, holding hands. All while she, Sebastian Blackwell's real wife, was kept hidden like some dirty little secret. Yet he felt guilty about letting Clarissa down. What about her? What about the years she spent swallowing her pride and staying silent? "Everly," Sebastian began, his tone turning righteous. "This is my career. You know that. Just bear with it a little longer, okay? Everything I do is for the job." He always justified it this way. Every scripted kiss, every public display of affection, it was all work. For a long time, she believed him, until her friend, Lillian Rowe, sent her pictures of Sebastian and Clarissa entering a private hotel suite together just 2 nights ago. Now his work involved planning a wedding so grand it would shock the world. Meanwhile, when she married him, there wasn't even a ceremony. Her voice cracked as she struggled to speak. "Sebastian, Clarissa is just a colleague, right? You're giving her the wedding of the century. What about me? I'm your wife. Did I ever get a wedding?" When they tied the knot, Sebastian was still a struggling extra, scraping by on bit parts. His parents were so paranoid that she was only marrying him for his money that they treated her with disdain from the start. To ease their fears, she signed that ridiculous confidentiality agreement, even agreeing not to have a wedding. Sebastian swore to her parents, "Once I've made it big, I'll give Everly the wedding she deserves." But even after he became an Academy Award winner, he never brought it up again. The one time she hinted they could have a small ceremony with just family, he waved it off, saying, "Work's too busy. Maybe later." But now, Clarissa's single phone call was all it took for him to agree. She must have seemed unreasonable to him because his tone grew sharp with irritation. "Everly, I've explained this 1,000 times. Why can't you understand? Clarissa and I are a global sensation. I can't just walk away. Can't you wait a little longer?" She didn't answer. The night stretched on, cold and cutting. Looking at the impatience on his face, she suddenly realized how exhausted she was. She didn't want to wait anymore. "Everly, Clarissa, and I have a plan," Sebastian said, his voice coaxing as if he were talking to a child. "We'll announce a peaceful breakup after the wedding. At most, another year, and I'll tell the world you're my wife. This is all for us, for our future. Can't you see that?" The sheer absurdity of his words made her laugh, a hollow sound echoing against the cold walls. She was already his wife, in name and in law, but here she was, hidden in the shadows, waiting for her husband to give her what was already hers. Meanwhile, for Clarissa, everything came easily. When they first began their publicity stunt pairing, Clarissa was just a rookie actress. The backlash from fans was immediate, with waves of online harassment aimed at her. So Sebastian played the role of the protective boyfriend, suing anyone who dared insult her. At a gala, when reporters pried into their relationship, he didn't even deny it. Instead, he pulled Clarissa into his arms and kissed her under the flashing cameras. The room erupted in applause. And Everly? She sat in the audience, watching her husband kiss another woman disguised as his assistant. He later explained it away as part of the script, something the company had arranged. But the script became their lives. Public outings, shared vacations, private gatherings with friends, they were inseparable. He didn't even bother bringing her along anymore. Even their mutual friends, like Jonathan Vale and Celeste Marlowe, eventually believed they were perfect for each other. Tears burned in her eyes, but Sebastian brushed them aside with his typical indifference. Don't listen to them, Everly. You're my wife. What others think doesn't matter. Then, as if to prove his devotion, he leaned in to kiss her forehead, gazing at her with those deep, expressive eyes that had fooled her countless times before. But this time, she didn't budge. "Let's sleep," she said, pulling the blanket over her head. She felt him hesitate, then sigh as he lay beside her, draping an arm around her. The cold glint of their wedding rings briefly caught the dim light before fading back into darkness. It was only then that Everly truly realized how far she had fallen. The next morning, as Everly was waking up, Sebastian Blackwell called. "Don't let your temper stop you from visiting the nursing home today to look after my parents," he said bluntly. Sebastian prided himself on being a dutiful son. Even though Theodore and Beatrice Blackwell were living in the best care facility money could buy, his mantra was, children should personally care for their parents. "Okay," she replied dully and hung up. Then, like clockwork, she headed to Willow Creek Care Center. As she stepped into the room with a pot of freshly made chicken soup, Beatrice's voice rang out, giddy with pride. "Oh, Amelia, isn't Clarissa just stunning? She'll be my daughter-in-law soon." She gestured at the television where Clarissa Benson's face filled the screen. The young nurse, Amelia Brown, lit up with excitement. "They're getting married?" "Of course!" Theodore and Beatrice replied in unison, beaming. Everly's steps faltered. A sharp pang shot through her chest, but she swallowed the bitterness and spoke softly. "Dad, Mom." The moment her voice registered, their smiles vanished, replaced by cold indifference. Amelia turned to her, confused. "And this lady who's here every day is—" "She's our goddaughter," Beatrice interrupted without missing a beat. Amelia nodded, her misunderstanding cemented. "Wow, I'm so jealous. You're so lucky to be part of Mr. Blackwell's family. Must be amazing to be his sister." Everly forced a stiff smile but felt no joy. When Amelia left, Beatrice's tone turned sharp. "Everly, must you sneak in here unannounced? Trying to scare us to death?" She held back her frustration. "You looked so happy chatting, I didn't want to interrupt." Setting the chicken soup on the table, she said, "I made this for you. Please give it a try." The moment Theodore lifted the bowl to his nose, he sneered and threw it onto the floor. Scalding liquid splashed onto Everly's hand, making her flinch in pain as tears stung her eyes. "What is this? It tastes awful. Everly, you can't even cook properly. What good are you?" Beatrice scoffed. "I'll make it again," she murmured, suppressing her anger while cleaning the mess. A crushing sense of futility enveloped her. 3 years of unyielding devotion felt utterly wasted. After finishing their massages, she prepared to leave but decided to ask one last question, holding on to a sliver of hope. "Did you know? Sebastian's planning a wedding with Clarissa." "Really?" Beatrice's face lit up, her excitement matching Theodore's. "That's wonderful!" they exclaimed, nearly bursting with joy. Everly expected the blow, but the ache still seeped into her chest. "But I'm his wife," she whispered, forcing a smile. Theodore's face twisted into a sneer. "Don't push your luck. We never wanted you to marry him in the first place. You've been sucking him dry for years. You should know when to let go." Beatrice chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. "Exactly. Stop clinging to Sebastian like some parasite." Parasite? She shouldn't have been surprised by their cruelty, but hearing it out loud sent a tremor through her body. For 3 years, she had never asked Sebastian for a dime. nor had he spent anything on her. She paid for her expenses and cared for his parents selflessly. And yet, this was the label she earned. It hit her then. Sebastian's cold heart wasn't a fluke. It was inherited. 3 years of devotion couldn't thaw them, nor could it change him. As their scolding and demands to fetch a bedpan continued, Everly turned on her heel and walked out without a word. Outside, the sun was starting to break through the clouds. She took a deep breath and made a call. "Hello? Do you have time? I've made my decision." When Everly returned home, the living room lights were already on. Sebastian Blackwell was sitting on the couch, his jaw tight, his whole body radiating anger. Before she could say a word, he leapt up and stormed toward her, his voice rising. "What the hell was that, Everly? I've been trying to make peace, and you show up at my parents' place just to throw a tantrum?" Everly couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity. "I made them soup, Sebastian. They didn't even taste it before throwing it on the floor. They have an entire staff of caregivers, yet they still expect me to clean up after them." She lifted her blistered hand. "As your wife, I don't even rank as high as a housekeeper." Sebastian frowned, exasperated. "They're old, Everly. They're bound to be emotional. They trust you, that's why they rely on you." "Trust me?" she spat, disgusted. "They trust you the most. So why don't you handle your own parents' bodily fluids?" In 3 years, Sebastian had barely visited Willow Creek. His excuse? Work kept him too busy. The truth? He couldn't stomach the indignity of his parents' failing health, so he dumped the responsibility onto her, and because she loved him, she accepted it. But her sacrifices were taken for granted. "How dare you talk to me like that?" Sebastian snarled, his temper boiling over. He slammed the coffee table so hard that the pot of boiling water toppled, scalding Everly's already wounded hand. She gasped, the searing pain making her vision blur. "Maybe now you'll learn to keep quiet," Sebastian sneered, satisfaction flashing in his eyes. "Can't you learn something from Clarissa? She's gentle, understanding. Why can't you stop picking fights?" Every sentence dripped with Clarissa's name. Always Clarissa. Clenching her jaw, Everly stood despite the pain and laughed bitterly. "If you love Clarissa so much, then marry her." "Everly!" Sebastian's face turned crimson, his voice shaking with rage. "Say that again, and I'll divorce you." This was exactly what she had been waiting for. Meeting his furious gaze, she responded firmly, "Good. Let's get a divorce." For a moment he froze, his expression a tangled mess of disbelief and anger. "You're serious?" he asked hoarsely. "Yes," she said. His reaction grew frantic. "Everly, are you insane? You know the agreement. If you're the one to file for divorce, you'll only get $18 That clause had always been his safety net. It never occurred to him that she might leave. Without hesitation, she pulled out her phone and held up her payment app. "Send me $18.80 and I'll sign the papers right now. I'll even throw in a parting gift." Sebastian's face went ghostly pale. Sebastian Blackwell never imagined that Everly Lancaster, his once docile and compliant wife, would one day stand so resolutely on the path to divorce. As he looked into her furious eyes, a strange ache pierced his chest, numbing him. He forced himself to calm down and think. Was it because she didn't want to take care of his parents? But wasn't it a daughter-in-law's duty to be dutiful? Was it jealousy over Clarissa Benson? But for 3 years, Everly had never shown a hint of envy. After mulling it over, he concluded, Everly was throwing a tantrum. That had to be it. Everly only ever acted out like this when she was upset. Relaxing his tightly pursed lips, Sebastian chuckled coldly. "Aren't you a bit old to be throwing childish fits?" "A tantrum?" He thought this was a tantrum? Everly laughed, the sound sharp and bitter. "Sebastian, I'm dead serious. That 1880 divorce settlement? It's a bargain. Both a life lesson and liberation for me. Honestly, it's the best deal I've ever made." The faint hope lingering in his eyes instantly vanished. His lips trembled as he asked, almost helplessly, "Everly, what do you want me to do?" "You know I'm busy. I admit I haven't been as attentive as I should, but I've done my best for you. The only thing I haven't given you is the wedding, and I promised you that. Just 1 more year. Can't you wait?" Hearing his justification, she felt nothing but revulsion. His best? Was it making her care for his parents while he stayed conveniently absent? Was it expecting her to cook and clean while enduring debilitating pain? Or was it hiding her away like a mistress instead of honoring her as a wife? As his wife, she wasn't even entitled to the respect a mistress would receive. And now, even after everything, Sebastian couldn't see where he'd gone wrong. She didn't bother wasting any more words. Pulling out the divorce papers she had prepared, she held them out with icy resolve. "What you can do for me is sign this." "Stop joking around," Sebastian said, his tone incredulous. "You're just upset." His eyes widened in disbelief when she didn't reply. Then, in a fit of rage, he grabbed the papers and tore them to shreds. "I won't sign. I'm not divorcing you." "Is it because you don't want to care for my parents? Because you're jealous of Clarissa? Because I didn't throw you a wedding? Is that worth ending a marriage over?" His voice rose in desperation. Everly stared at him, expressionless. "Keep tearing. I've got plenty more." Reaching into her bag, she pulled out a stack of 10 identical copies and threw them into the air like a storm of confetti. As the fluttering papers rained down around them, she picked up his Rising Brew coffeehouse order from the entryway. "Consider this your $1880. The divorce papers? Don't forget to sign them." Walking out of the house she had once called home, Everly Lancaster felt an invisible shackle snap free. Years of suffocating sacrifice crumbled behind her. She pulled out her phone and, for the first time in 3 years, posted on her Instagram stories. "Back to my roots." Within minutes, her inbox exploded. "Everly, you're back! Join my new studio, Everly. We need you. I'll invest in whatever project you want. Just say the word." The comment section turned into a battleground between powerful producers and agencies, all desperate to claim her talent. Buried in the noise, however, was a single, unnoticed comment. A lonely question mark from Sebastian Blackwell. For 3 years, he had crushed her spirit, dismissing her dreams as childish and calling her ignorant about the industry. He had conveniently forgotten that it was her connections and her award-winning student film that first opened the doors to his career. She wiped a tear from her cheek, not from sadness, but from bittersweet relief. She wasn't worthless. She never had been. Turning down all offers for now, Everly knew she needed time. There was still one final task left to complete, a gift she had been preparing for Sebastian. 10 days later, at a grand red carpet event hosted by the prestigious Sterling Crown Awards, the world watched as Sebastian Blackwell and Clarissa Benson made their public wedding announcement. Fans screamed with excitement, holding banners and tossing flower petals. Fireworks burst above the venue in blinding showers of color. When Sebastian stepped onto the red carpet in a custom black tuxedo, escorting Clarissa in a shimmering diamond-studded gown, the crowd went into a frenzy. "You two look like royalty," the host gushed. Clarissa giggled shyly. "Consider it a little preview for our fans." The host then turned to Sebastian. "Any words for the audience?" Sebastian, oozing charm, leaned into the microphone. "Being with Clarissa is the best decision I've ever made. I'll never regret it." Then, in a voice so soft that only the sharpest microphones caught it, he added, "I hope you won't regret it either." Only Everly understood the hidden message. From her private hotel suite, Everly smiled and picked up her phone. "Showtime," she whispered. The moment Sebastian Blackwell slipped the massive diamond ring onto Clarissa Benson's finger, a thunderous chorus of boos erupted from the crowd. Confusion flickered across the host's face. Sebastian froze and Clarissa's smile faltered. Then the jeers became words. "Isn't he already married? What kind of scumbag flaunts a fake love story while hiding a wife? Clarissa's the other woman. Shameless." In an instant, the once adoring sea of faces twisted into a mob of outrage. Journalists shoved microphones forward, shouting accusations. Their manager, Philip Green, rushed onto the stage, whispering urgently into Sebastian's ear. His world tilted violently as he processed the nightmare. Everly had leaked their marriage license online. Photos, documents, signed affidavits, everything. Their carefully constructed fairy tale had crumbled into ashes. Panic engulfed Clarissa, who staggered backward, gripping Sebastian's arm. "Do something," she hissed. But Sebastian was paralyzed. The cameras captured every crack in their perfect facade, the rage, the fear, the guilt, broadcasting it live to millions around the globe. The award ceremony's live feed abruptly cut to black. Security hustled the humiliated couple off stage. Back in her hotel room, Everly calmly sipped a glass of red wine, watching the chaos unfold. "How's my little parting gift, Sebastian?" she murmured. For Sebastian and Clarissa, the night was far from over. Their sponsorships were pulled. Invitations to upcoming films were rescinded. By sunrise, lawsuits for breach of contract piled on Sebastian's doorstep. The next morning, Everly's doorbell rang incessantly. She opened it to find Sebastian, disheveled, with dark circles under his bloodshot eyes. His voice cracked as he yelled, "Everly, why did you do this?" She met his glare with icy calm. "Did I lie, Sebastian? Weren't you married?" He gritted his teeth, fury blazing. "You could have waited one more year, just one more year." "The first year," she said slowly, "you said you needed to maintain your image. The second year, you said the fans needed time. And the third year, you planned a wedding with someone else." Her voice sharpened, cutting him deeper than any knife. "You gave Clarissa the dream, while I lived the nightmare." Sebastian trembled with rage. "You're just jealous." "Jealous?" Everly laughed, a sharp, mocking sound. "You flatter yourself." Desperation flickered across his face. "Clarissa tried to kill herself last night because of the online hate. She's back in the hospital." Everly arched a brow, unimpressed. "And why should I care?" He stammered. "You've ruined her. You've ruined us." "No, Sebastian," she interrupted coldly. "You ruined yourself." She turned, grabbed a thick envelope from the counter, and tossed it into his chest. He fumbled with it, pulling out medical reports. His face drained of color. "While you pampered Clarissa," Everly said, her voice breaking, "your wife was battling severe bipolar disorder, alone, and you never even noticed." Tears slid down her cheeks, but her voice never wavered. "I left the reports on your nightstand for a week. You never even looked." Sebastian's hands shook as he read the diagnosis. Regret flooded his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" he whispered hoarsely. "I did," she said, her voice so soft it was almost a whisper. "You just didn't care enough to listen." Wiping away the last of her tears, Everly stepped back, cold steel in her eyes. "This is goodbye, Sebastian." Without waiting for his reply, she slammed the door in his face. Everly truly believed that would be the last she'd see of Sebastian Blackwell. But the next evening, just as she was reviewing scripts sent by major studios, the doorbell rang. When she opened it, there he was, holding a collection of pitiful offerings, a bouquet of wilted flowers, a homemade seafood porridge, and a face full of remorse. "Everly," he began, voice trembling. "I know it's too late, but please give me one more chance." She tilted her head, studying him like a curious observer watching a defeated gladiator. "I know your stomach's sensitive," he added quickly. "I made this porridge myself, to show I care." He lifted the lid proudly. The moment the smell of seafood hit her, Everly's stomach twisted in disgust. Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Without hesitation, she swatted the bowl from his hands. It clattered to the ground, scattering shrimp and scallops across the marble floor. Sebastian flinched. "Why?" he croaked, wounded. "Did you forget I'm allergic to seafood?" Her voice was so cold it could freeze oceans. Sebastian's lips moved silently, grasping for excuses. "Admit it, Sebastian," she said, arms crossed. "Your heart hasn't been mine for a long time." "It's not true," he whispered brokenly. She turned away, disgust thick in her throat. "Your sudden change of heart isn't love. It's guilt. If I hadn't shown you my diagnosis, you'd still believe I was the villain." Tears welled in his eyes. "Everly, I'll leave Clarissa. I swear, I'll devote my life to you." She laughed darkly. "Too bad, Sebastian. I have standards. I don't want a man already tainted by another woman." His knees buckled as he fell onto the floor, clutching her legs. "Please, please, don't leave me." She shook him off. Her heart hardened. "Leave," she commanded. She slammed the door shut with a finality that echoed through the hallway. That was the last time she ever saw Sebastian Blackwell, as a man. Sebastian's downfall was merciless. Unable to salvage his career, he was abandoned by sponsors, friends, and even Clarissa, who issued a public statement calling him a manipulative liar before fleeing the country. As if that humiliation weren't enough, Sebastian's own parents, Theodore and Beatrice Blackwell, went on national television. They painted Everly as a gold digger and an abusive woman who exploited their poor, hard-working son. They shamelessly wept for the cameras, twisting the story into a grotesque fairy tale of victimhood. At first, the public wavered. Then, one by one, the staff of Willow Creek Care Center came forward. Everly came here every day without fail, said Nurse Amelia Brown in a televised interview. She paid for their medicines out of her own pocket. She massaged their joints, brought them meals, held their hands. She endured their insults and demands silently. It wasn't Everly who mistreated them. Another nurse, Diana Hartley, chimed in. It was the Blackwells who abused her. The tide turned viciously. Hashtags like Justice for Everly and Blackwell Exposed trended worldwide. Sponsors canceled contracts with the Blackwells overnight. Their family name, once synonymous with elegance, became a punchline. One evening, Everly received a message, an anonymous scan of a fully signed divorce contract. Beneath Sebastian's signature was a desperate scribble. Everly, can you ever forgive me? She stared at the screen for a long moment. Then, without a shred of hesitation, she pressed delete. Turning back to her screenplay notes, she smiled faintly. Forgiveness? Sebastian Blackwell had simply reaped what he had sown. A year later, Everly Lancaster stood atop the world. Her debut film, Breaking Dawn, shattered decade-old box office records within just 3 days, sweeping 4 major awards and marking her as one of Hollywood's most formidable new directors. At the grand award ceremony, Everly entered last, walking down the red carpet arm in arm with her cast, Everett Cole and Evelyn Morgan, to deafening cheers. Flashbulbs exploded like fireworks, illuminating her in a halo of victory. Each step she took was a defiance against every insult, every humiliation. Once upon a time, Sebastian Blackwell had mocked her, telling her she would never belong on a red carpet. Now, every light, every camera, was focused solely on her. The glittering night sky above couldn't outshine her triumph. Just as Everly reached the venue entrance, a sudden, shrill shriek pierced the air. Everly Lancaster, go to hell! The crowd gasped. Time seemed to slow as a figure lunged out of the crowd, a glint of metal flashing under the bright lights. It was Clarissa Benson, her face twisted with rage and madness, a knife in her hand. Security reacted too slowly. The blade was already slicing through the air, aimed directly at Everly's heart. Before she could react, a body threw itself between her and the knife. Sebastian Blackwell. The knife sank deep into his abdomen and he collapsed instantly, blood staining the pristine red carpet. Clarissa stood frozen, horror dawning across her face as the crowd erupted in screams. "No! This isn't how it was supposed to happen!" she shrieked hysterically as security wrestled her to the ground. Everly knelt beside Sebastian, her expression unreadable. He looked up at her with tear-filled eyes, a weak, bloody smile on his lips. "Congratulations, Everly," he whispered, each word dripping with pain and regret. She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for saving me. We're even now." Sebastian choked on a sob. "I'm sorry. For everything." But regrets couldn't turn back time. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on a handkerchief as paramedics rushed in. Clarissa was sentenced to prison for attempted murder. Sebastian survived, but barely. His once glamorous life crumbled completely. Left with mounting medical bills, no career, and no family support, he was reduced to working as an extra in low-budget films, a ghost of the man he used to be. 6 months later, at the Hollywood Directors Guild Awards, Everly made history, becoming the youngest female director to win the top honor. After the ceremony, Everett Cole found her backstage, holding a bouquet of crimson roses. "You did it, Everly," he said, his smile tender and proud. She accepted the flowers with a playful smirk. "One award isn't enough. I want more." Everett laughed warmly. "Then I'll keep waiting for you no matter how high you climb." She gazed at the dazzling lights of the city beyond the stage, feeling invincible. "See you at the top," she said, her voice steady, fierce, and full of promise. And this time, no one, not Sebastian Blackwell, not Clarissa Benson, not the shadows of her past, could ever bring her down again. 2 years later, the world finally forgot the scandal that had once shaken Hollywood to its core. Everly Lancaster didn't just survive, she flourished. With 3 critically acclaimed films under her belt, she was now hailed as the Queen of Cinematic Rebirth, a director who could turn pain into art more magnificent than any fiction. One rainy afternoon, as she prepared for the premiere of her 4th movie, Ashes of Yesterday, her assistant, Chloe Harrington, hurried into her office, breathless. "Everly, there's someone downstairs." Chloe hesitated. "You might want to see this." Curious, Everly glanced through the large glass windows overlooking the lobby. There, drenched from head to toe, stood a frail figure, holding a wilted bouquet of white lilies, the very flowers Everly once said she hated. Sebastian Blackwell. Time had not been kind to him. His hair was streaked with gray, his once proud posture stooped. His clothes clung to his shivering frame like a drowning man's last hope. Security hovered nearby, unsure whether to throw him out. Chloe asked carefully, "Should I call security?" Everly smiled serenely, tapping her manicured nails against the desk. "No," she said sweetly. "Let him in." Minutes later, Sebastian stumbled into her office, dripping rainwater onto her expensive carpet. He sank to his knees, lifting the wilted flowers toward her. "Everly," he croaked. I never stopped loving you." The room fell into a charged silence, broken only by the steady ticking of the grandfather clock. Everly rose gracefully from her seat and circled him, her heels clicking with lethal elegance. "Is that so?" she asked, voice dripping with quiet amusement. "You loved me, yet discarded me for fame. You loved me, yet hid me like a shameful secret. You loved me, yet threw me to the wolves while you danced with Clarissa Benson in the moonlight." Sebastian sobbed, clutching her skirt. "Please give me another chance. I'll do anything. I'll be your assistant, your driver, whatever you need. Just don't leave me behind." She gently pried his hands off her skirt and dropped the wilted lilies into his lap. "You already are behind," she said coldly. With a final pitying glance, she turned to Chloe. "Escort Mr. Blackwell out. Kindly inform him that if he trespasses again, we will involve the authorities." Sebastian cried out as security dragged him away, his wails echoing through the marble halls. As the heavy doors swung shut, Everly straightened her jacket and turned back to her work. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, Everly Lancaster stood untouched, a goddess crowned by her resilience. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile only a woman who had truly conquered hell could wear. And somewhere deep in the shadows, a broken man realized too late. He had lost a queen. Forever. 1 year after her 4th film's record-breaking success, Everly Lancaster found herself invited to an exclusive gala honoring the most influential figures in cinema. The venue glittered with chandeliers and crystal fountains, but none of it dazzled Everly more than the man standing by the grand piano, Everett Cole. He was no longer just a rising star. His latest film had earned him Best Actor, and whispers in the industry called him Hollywood's Golden Heart. When Everett spotted Everly across the room, his face lit up, and for a moment, it was as if time folded itself neatly between them. He crossed the room in long, purposeful strides, stopping inches away. "Director Lancaster," he teased, a playful glint in his eye. "May I have the honor of this dance?" Everly hesitated, amused. "Everett, this isn't a movie scene." "Maybe not," he said, offering his hand, "but you're still the most captivating story in this room." Against her better judgment, she placed her hand in his. As the orchestra swelled with a soulful melody, Everett led her into the center of the marble floor. They moved gracefully, perfectly in sync, as though their bodies remembered something their hearts hadn't yet dared to speak aloud. Midway through the dance, he whispered, "Everly, I've waited long enough." She looked up at him, startled. His gaze was steady, warm, and unafraid. "I don't want to be just someone who watches you from afar," he said quietly. "I want to be the man standing beside you, through the triumphs, the storms, and everything in between." Her throat tightened. Once, she had loved a man who trampled her dreams. Now, here was a man who wanted to guard them. "Everett," she began, but he shook his head. "Don't answer now," he murmured. "I'll wait, as long as it takes." The music reached its crescendo. Everly rested her head lightly against his chest, allowing herself, for the first time in years, to simply breathe. Maybe love wasn't meant to be a battlefield. Maybe, just maybe, it could be a quiet sanctuary. And as the chandeliers sparkled above them and the world watched with bated breath, Everly Lancaster allowed herself one secret smile. Her story wasn't over. It was only just beginning.